Amazing Millionaire exposes hidden secret at home. Employees' shocking request will inspire you. Jonathan Reynolds stared out of the window of his sleek San Francisco penthouse, the somber rain cascading down the glass like thoughts he couldn't quite articulate. As a self-made millionaire, owner of a thriving tech startup, his life was a whirlwind of meetings, late nights, and high-stakes decisions. Yet an emptiness loomed over him, slipping through the cracks of his success. Today, he was entangled in plans for his next expansion. The numbers danced on the screen, but his mind was elsewhere, consumed by a stray email that sent a jolt through him. Molly, his dedicated administrative assistant, was asking him to visit the diner where they first connected. The old diner flickered back to life in his memory, a humble place that reminded him of the values his immigrant parents instilled in him. Those shared meals and conversations had fashioned a foundation of support and community during his rising years. Now, it felt like a distant echo lost in the luxury of his penthouse. Molly's plea wasn't merely for assistance. It was a reminder of that foundation. It weighed heavily against the backdrop of his success. Should he risk his carefully built fortune to save this piece of history, or let it vanish like so many memories, eclipsed by ambition and wealth? He wavered, grappling with conflicting emotions, guilt creeping alongside the excitement of his success. Pressure mounted when Molly revealed her family's struggles to keep the diner afloat against an unforgiving economy. His heart raced as revelations about the diner began to unravel the blissful ignorance he'd wrapped around his rise to power. Digging deep into his family's history revealed not just a story of resilience but also of injustice. Every document he uncovered deepened the knot in his stomach. The diner wasn't just a quaint eatery. It was a battleground for dignity that his parents fought for, a narrative he had dismissed in his pursuit of wealth. Should he intervene? His ambition had blinded him to the price of his success. Memories of the diner's clinking cutlery, shared laughter, and warm smiles tugged at something deep within him. The weight of his ancestors' sacrifices turned his racing thoughts turbulent. Every heartbeat echoed his concern. Can he save the diner and preserve their legacy? Or is he just chasing ghosts from a past unwilling to let him go? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. As he spent more time at the diner, talking to Molly, her perseverance ignited a flame of inspiration he hadn't felt in years. But with every shared laugh came the bone-chilling realization that he was also confronting his own vulnerabilities. His muscles tensed and relaxed, caught in an emotional tug-of-war. Could he really sacrifice a portion of his empire for a business that was sinking? The stakes rose with each gathering at the diner, and the critical fundraising event loomed ever closer, a harbinger of fateful choices. Jonathan felt a swell of anguish ripple through him. What if he failed? The fear of loss clashed violently with the anticipation of standing up for what was right. Simplifying the dilemma to a mere financial decision stripped it of its weight. As he headed to the diner for the event, his heart thrummed with worry. A storm of thoughts engulfed him. The road ahead was muddy with uncertainty, and as he entered he felt the eyes of hope and despair upon him. Would he muster the courage to confront not just his past, but every fear that raged within him? The diner's lifeblood pulsed with palpable urgency, pulling him closer to the moment when he would have to make a choice that could reshape his life and intertwine it irrevocably with those he vowed never to forget. The familiar bell jingled as Jonathan pushed open the diner's door, the scent of freshly brewed coffee and greasy meals welcoming him like an old friend. It felt both comforting and jarring, reminding him of a time when life was less complicated, burdened by expectation and fear. Every step he took inside seemed to echo his conflicts, the worries clinging to him like shadows, seeking warmth in the connections he had previously neglected. Molly stood at the counter, her enthusiasm palpable as she waved, an anchor in the turbulent seas of his psyche. He returned the gesture, though he felt the weight of uncertainty settle heavily upon him. Would he be the hero she hoped he would be, or merely a wealthy benefactor pulling strings from afar? As the crowd began to fill the diner, Jonathan allowed himself a moment of introspection. He glanced around, absorbing the worn booths, the laughter, the muted conversations, all contributors to a vibrant yet fragile ecosystem. He recognized that for many, this place was more than a diner. It was a refuge, a hub of stories woven through time and experience. Realizing the critical role it played in people's lives stirred a sense of urgency within him. But his phone buzzed in his pocket, a stark reminder of the tech world calling him back to reality. Messages from investors and reminders of looming deadlines clawed at his concentration. Each notification tugged him back toward the path he had carved through ambition and relentless drive, threatening to pull him away from the kind of person he yearned to be. "Jonathan, can you help us?" Molly's voice punctured his thoughts, and he saw the hope in her eyes. There it was. The choice laid bare. Could he really dive into this mission of saving the diner, risking the reputation and resources he had tirelessly built? "I'm here, Molly," he assured her, forcing himself to focus. "What do you need?" She began to outline plans for a fundraising event, her voice resolute, fueled by passion. As she spoke, Jonathan felt something shift within him. Her unwavering determination was infectious. He marveled at how her conviction illuminated the stark contrast to the cold calculations he often dealt with in his corporate world. But beneath the surface, doubts gnawed at him, whispers of insecurity and fear reminding him of the giants he was up against. If he failed, what would it say about him? Yet, as he listened, he couldn't help but realize his own vulnerabilities, the cracks in his seemingly perfect life. Helping at the diner was about more than just donations. It was a chance to root himself in the values of hard work and commitment, the very principles his parents had embodied. Molly's fearlessness sparked a revelation. Perhaps failure was not the worst fate. Instead, it was the refusal to try, to embrace the uncomfortable uncertainty of leaning into the unknown that loomed before him. A decision crystallized in his mind. He would not allow fear to deter him this time. "Let's make this happen," he said, conviction lining his words. As her face broke into a relieved smile, something shifted within Jonathan. Perhaps this was the turning point he had been searching for, a moment of reclamation from the distance he had maintained for too long. His path forward, though fraught with risks, felt more profound than the sterile confines of boardrooms and profit margins. With renewed purpose, he took charge, diving into the minutiae of organizing the fundraiser, embracing the challenge with enthusiasm. Throughout it all, he remained acutely aware of the stakes. He had to connect not just with Molly and the diner, but with the community that thrived there, proving so much more than just financial backing was at play. His heart would have to follow. Yet in the depths of this reinvigorated dedication, a lingering thought hovered. What would people truly think of him if he failed? The time had come to confront not only his past, but the roles he had played in creating it. In the moments of chaos leading up to the fundraiser, his phone buzzed again, this time with a message that shook him. "Some people in the industry will not take kindly to your involvement there." The stakes were higher than he had anticipated, and just when he thought he was finding his footing, a shadow emerged, threatening to destabilize everything he was trying to build. Jonathan could feel the tension building once more. The moment of truth was drawing closer, and he needed to prepare to face whatever came next. Gritting his teeth against the mounting pressure, Jonathan stared at the screen. The words, "Some people in the industry will not take kindly," echoing ominously in his mind. This wasn't mere idle gossip. It was a warning laced with implications about the invisible hands that often influenced his world. He cast around the diner, taking in the faded photos on the wall, the laughter of children, and the comforting clatter of cutlery. In this moment, he felt a surge of resolve rising within him, igniting an internal fire that pushed back against the shadows of doubt lurking in his heart. He didn't yet know exactly how to navigate the obstacles ahead, but he would not allow them to paralyze him. "Jonathan?" Molly's voice broke through his reverie, her eyes filled with an infectious mix of anticipation and anxiety. "Could you put together a list of potential sponsors? I really think we can pull in the local businesses if they see how much this diner means to the community." "Right." He nodded, already projecting himself into the task. The threads of his thoughts began to weave into a new strategy, an elaborate design to keep the diner's doors open. "Let's brainstorm some talking points that highlight what this place gives to the area. We need to create a narrative." As they settled into a corner booth, pens and papers sprawled before them like the chaos of their undertaking, Jonathan felt a weight lift slightly. Here, among grease-stained menus and the hum of friendly chatter, he could momentarily distance himself from the weight of deadlines and expectations emanating from his boardroom. But even as they jotted down ideas, his mind flickered back to the warning. Was this just a threat from rivals who felt threatened by his branching out into something decidedly human? The question loomed, blurring the line between ambition and hubris. The notion that he had once been part of an industry that thrived on cutthroat tactics gnawed at him. He glanced at Molly, so alive and determined, and wondered if he was, in fact, abandoning who he truly was. "Do you think people will judge me for getting involved in something like this?" he asked suddenly, vulnerability spilling out despite his efforts to remain composed. Molly paused, her brow furrowing in thought. "Honestly, maybe. But it's not about them. It's about what you want to do. Are you doing this for them or for yourself?" And therein lay the crux of his struggle. Could he fully commit to this pursuit, knowing that he might be dragging the very image he had built into the murky waters of public opinion? Jonathan took a breath, allowing her question to settle within him. "For myself," he murmured, his reflection draping over him like a shadowy cloak. "I want to be that person again. The one who believes in something beyond profit margins." As the conversation unfolded, Jonathan felt an unprecedented clarity emerging. He envisioned the fundraising drive, not just as a project, but as a form of redemption, not only for the diner, but for the parts of himself that had withered away under the relentless pursuit of wealth and status. With each stroke of the pen, he poured his passion onto the pages, but the back of his mind still harbored apprehension about the brewing storm in his industry. What kind of repercussions could he face? But instead of crumbling under pressure, he began to strategize. This moment was bigger than him. It was about establishing his own values in a world that often sidelined them. A plan was coalescing in his mind, one that aligned with the innate belief in fighting for what was right, even if it meant facing resistance. Just then, a notification pinged again. Jonathan's heart raced as he glanced at his phone. Another insider message, this one even more gravelly than the last. "People are willing to fight back if you continue down this path. Choose wisely." The implications were chilling. The stakes had just escalated dramatically. The confrontation he dreaded was no longer abstract. The time had come to explore the depths of his own convictions, to see if they held under fire, and whether he was prepared to face those who might seek to undermine him for daring to change the narrative. Jonathan looked back at Molly, her face lit with determination. He could feel the walls closing in on him, yet for the first time, he welcomed the challenge. It was time to prepare for the inevitable conflict that lay ahead, the kind that would test the very core of who he had become. Would he empower himself, or retreat into the safety of silence? With a sudden resolve, he committed to the next steps. He could no longer stand on the sidelines of his own life. He was ready to confront the shadows. The moment of reckoning was near. Would he emerge unscathed, or be swallowed whole by the very ambitions he sought to reclaim? The early morning light filtered into the diner, casting elongated shadows across the linoleum floor. Jonathan sat at the corner booth, designing the outline for his strategy. 2 cups of coffee cooled beside his notepad, forgotten relics of his exasperated brainstorming. The date for the fundraiser loomed, and he felt an urgency racing against him, yet the weight of external pressures threatened to suffocate his honest intentions. With the diner quiet, his thoughts drifted again to that ominous warning. People are willing to fight back. Who were these people, and what lengths would they go to maintain their grip on his former corporate world? Did they know he was stepping beyond the parameters of their league? Images of cutthroat meetings and backroom deals hovered like phantoms, stealing air from his newfound purpose. Yet another voice echoed in his mind. Molly, urging him toward authenticity. Jonathan grasped a pen with determination. He envisioned standing before a room full of potential sponsors, each person representing a chance to breathe life into the diner, each face a reflection of the community's hope. He began drafting his pitch, framing it not as a plea, but as a mission. We're not just raising money, we're sustaining a lifeline. The first bullet point read, "Invest in local culture." But as he wrote, he felt a nagging doubt creep in. Was he truly capable of inspiring acceptance, or would his past undermine his efforts? The confident Jonathan, who had thrived on competition, now found himself paralyzed by the vulnerability of revisiting purpose over profit. Who would genuinely embrace him in this second act? He snapped the notebook shut and took a deep breath, eyes flitting to the entrance. Molly arrived, her usual buoyancy shadowed by a thin veil of tension. "Hey, everything okay?" she asked, sliding into the seat opposite him. "Just thinking," he replied, managing a half smile, but he couldn't shake the ever-pressing anxiety. "You know, Jonathan, if you're worried about how others will perceive this, you're going to get nowhere." Her voice held a firmness that commanded attention. "Forget the view from their windows. Look at what's in front of you and believe in it." Her words pierced through the fog. He felt the flicker of a new resolve, a refusal to surrender to fear. Perhaps the fight wasn't simply about fundraising. Perhaps it was about reshaping the narrative not just for himself, but for anyone teetering on the brink of self-doubt. "I have a question for you," he said suddenly, surprising himself. "What if we don't just focus on raising money from businesses? What if we involve the public, make them part of this journey?" Molly's eyes widened with interest. "You mean making it more of a community event?" "Yes. We can share the diner's story, the stories of customers, of families. Maybe we can create a mural or install a story wall where people contribute their experiences. It would help people feel like they're part of something." Jonathan watched the excitement dance in Molly's expression. She nodded enthusiastically, causing his heart to swell with hope. This couldn't just be about financial gain. It could be a celebration of identity and resilience. But then doubt crept back. As he laid out the new strategy, he considered how the industry would respond. What if they perceived him as a traitor to his roots, a man abandoning the realm of the elite? "What if I lose everything I've built?" he murmured, regret flashing through his mind. "Listen, Jonathan," Molly said, leaning closer. "You're defining your path now. This is about your authenticity. Don't let the fear of losing shape your decisions. Embrace what is real and see where it takes you." Silence settled between them, thick with reverberating truths. Jonathan sank into reflection, the act of transformation demanding much yet promising more, his vision entwined with possibility rather than fear. Every moment felt like preparation for what was to come. Clarity surged through him. He was poised on the precipice of something larger, a chance to embrace the influences of both past and present. However, lurking behind each decision was the weight of potential fallout. Nothing was coming easy, but neither was the yearning to stay true to himself. As he began crafting a concrete plan, another ping interrupted their conversation, a message he could no longer ignore. "We know what you're up to." Jonathan felt the rush of adrenaline again, a stark reminder of the stakes involved. It was time to unveil not just the diner's story, but his own metamorphosis before an audience, both real and intangible. Would he stand tall against the forces of backlash? Or would this be the moment he crumbled beneath the weight of his past? The crossroads lay before him. The choice was imminent, and Jonathan had to decide whether to fight back or fade away. Jonathan's breath caught in his throat as the notification glowed ominously on his phone. That single sentence echoed in his mind. "We know what you're up to." Anxiety collided with adrenaline, pushing him to weigh his options like he was back in the boardroom, calculating risks and rewards. But this time, the stakes felt personal, fragility underlying the bravado he had built around himself. Molly's voice broke the spell. "What did it say?" Jonathan hesitated, the nervous pulse of uncertainty almost tangible in the air. "It's just a message from someone," he replied, his mind racing through possible interpretations. "They seem to know about my plans to change things around here." Molly leaned in closer, her expression a mix of concern and curiosity. "Do you think it's someone from your old world, the corporate side?" He nodded, frowning. "It has to be. I've been distancing myself from that life. Maybe they feel threatened." The room around him felt suffocating, the diner's familiar smells failing to comfort him. He had chosen authenticity over the cold meritocracy of his past, but was it worth crumbling under pressure to protect this new identity? "Jonathan, remember why you're doing this," Molly urged, a fire in her voice. "You're not just creating a fundraiser, you're redefining your future. Don't let them intimidate you. Show them who you've become." A flicker of resilience mingled with his growing apprehension. Perhaps it was time to turn the tables. Instead of hiding from the shadows of his former life, he could leverage them as a catalyst for growth. With newfound clarity, he realized that the uncertainty surrounding his old identity could be used in his favor. "I could reach out to them," he said slowly, beginning to hatch a plan. "Invite them to see what I'm doing, and include them in this journey. Transparency might just be my best weapon." "But what if they see it as a weakness?" Molly questioned, concern etched in her brow. Jonathan shrugged. "Or perhaps a glimpse of vulnerability that could humanize me in their eyes. If I'm willing to open up about my intentions, my failures as much as my triumphs, they may feel compelled to support me instead of sabotage." As the ideas flowed between them, Jonathan's spirit began to lift. He visualized a hybrid meeting, one that bridged his past and future. It wasn't just about money. It was about creating a narrative that could resonate with both his old colleagues and the community alike. Each line of the diner's story that he had fought so hard to reclaim could serve as a powerful reminder of the man he had become. But lurking behind his creeping optimism lay a whisper of doubt. What if the old guards didn't want to be included? What if they grew more hostile, feeling threatened by his efforts to reclaim his space? The corporate mentality rarely adapted willingly. Absorbing the risk he was contemplating felt like standing on a tightrope. One misstep could lead to a disastrous fall. "Okay, Jonathan," he whispered to himself, tapping the pen against the table. "It's time to execute this." He felt a surge of urgency as he reached towards his notepad. Names, dates, potential allies. He jotted them down frantically, the planning energizing him. "I'll send out the invites for a gathering this weekend," he declared. "An informal sit-down, a chance to introduce them to this new vision. But I'll be frank, we need them. Without their support, this won't work." Molly observed him quietly, a soft smile breaking through her earlier tension. "That's the spirit. You're moving forward, not backing down." Jonathan could sense it was his moment to seize back control, to use the ghosts of his past not as chains to bind him, but as stepping stones toward reinvention. Just as he was about to finalize the message on his phone, the screen dimmed with another incoming notification, cutting through his determination. The words read like a flashing warning. "They won't go easy on you. The threats will escalate." Jonathan's heart dropped into his stomach. For every courageous step he took, the stakes climbed higher. Would these threats be simply another layer of intimidation, or do they signal the beginning of a more sinister confrontation? As he weighed his next move, the diner felt charged, the scents heavier, the shadows longer. Would he challenge them openly, or retreat and fortify? Either way, the showdown was looming on the horizon, and this time, Jonathan would have to muster, not just to face his past, but to redefine his future. The real question emerged. Would he stand firmly in his newfound purpose, or yield to the whispering fears of a battle yet to come? Jonathan stared at the fresh notification, the words burning into his brain like a neon sign. They won't go easy on you. The challenge felt palpable. It gripped him like a vice, squeezing out the breath he finally had begun to reclaim. Each message pushed him further into a spiral of reflection. The stakes weren't merely financial, they were moral, implicating his values in the heated cauldron of his past. Seated in the diner, surrounded by a blend of chatter and clattering dishes, he felt starkly alone. His heart raced, not just from fear of opposition, but from the looming weight of self-doubt. Was he really prepared for the battle ahead? Could he protect his new identity from the corrosive influences of old loyalties and ambitions? The weight of Molly's gaze steadied him. "Jonathan, you've already transformed," she insisted. "Your journeys through trial and failure have shaped a more authentic you. Don't underestimate that. Every risk is a chance to solidify who you are now, not who you were, who I was." Jonathan mused quietly, pen tapping against the tabletop. The nervous habit had persisted through years spent in boardrooms and negotiations. Yet, here he was, grappling with the uncertainties of the very legacy he once revered. His mind wandered to the relationships he'd built, connections cemented by status and power. Were those relationships genuine or merely transactional? He penned a list of potential attendees for his meeting, considering each name. Past associates had been his allies, but now they could easily shift into adversaries, and that realization gnawed at him. The thought of confronting them, a group bound by competition and ego, invoked a profound sense of dread. Yet, was he not capable of growth? Perhaps each challenge, each confrontation, was another stepping stone to evolve. A voice whispered in his head, urging him to lean into the discomfort. He had already changed. Standing in vulnerability would only showcase that transformation, perhaps even ignite a different kind of camaraderie. "I can't back down," he thought fiercely, setting aside the notebook. "I need to take the risk, shift their perspectives." He had seen the power of vulnerability in previous meetings. His honest explorations of failure had not only humanized him, but created unexpected allies among those he'd once seen as competition. Recalling past events, there had always been a dynamic that threw the old guard into a frenzy of jealousy and contempt. Transparency had often caused defensiveness to rise. But why should he assume hostility would govern this new gathering? What if he could reverse that narrative? Jonathan's resolve crystallized. He would call for the meeting. He would lay everything bare, from ambitious goals to the specter of his past. He couldn't alter how they would respond, but he could choose how he approached them. The act of reaching out, he realized, was a poignant reflection of where he now stood, balanced on a precipice, ready to leap into the unknown with the knowledge that personal growth required both courage and tenacity. However, before sending the invites, a gnawing thought crept back to him. What if they didn't respond? What if they dismissed his offer, considering it a sign of weakness rather than strength? The chance of wasting precious time was enough to churn his stomach. As he contemplated this scenario, he felt the phone buzz again in his pocket. His pulse quickened as he took it out, scanning for a new message. This time, the text read, "Make one mistake, and they'll come after you. You'll be exposed." The threat felt explicit, an ultimatum veiled in intimidation. It struck him that his overtures of transparency could very well be a double-edged sword, one that might slice through carefully crafted relationships, revealing the raw, unprotected core of who he had become. As the heaviness of uncertainty seeped in, Jonathan took a breath, preparing to face his own shadow. What lay ahead would not just be a battle with his former colleagues, but an exploration of the very essence of trust, both in himself and in those who once belonged to the world he was attempting to redefine. In that moment of contemplation, resolve brewing within him, he considered the possibility that the next few days could dissolve into chaos, or perhaps illuminate the path he had longed to travel. Either way, it was time to confront the game he had once played with such ease and dive into the raw unpredictability of true connection and growth. The next move awaited, tension laced with determination, the battlefield yearning for resolution. As he prepared to send the invitations, Jonathan felt the faint echo of possibility rise within him. Would this meeting be the catalyst to transform his new reality, or merely a confirmation that he had lost the battle before it even began? Jonathan's fingers hovered over the keyboard, caught between trepidation and resolve. He envisioned the invitation boldly sent, a clarification of his intentions. The weight of those past connections forced him to pause. Could he convey authenticity without opening himself to brutal scrutiny? He took a deep breath, banishing the thought. No more second-guessing, he muttered under his breath. Hand steady now, he crafted the email, an invitation to vulnerability and dialogue. Each word felt like a personal pledge to the man he wanted to be, not the one who thrived on competition and fear. With a deliberate click, the emails flew off into cyberspace. Almost instantaneously, a rush of anxiety waned, replaced by a flicker of empowerment. That small act of commitment felt monumental. Even if the outcome was uncertain, at least he was refusing to cower to apprehension. Over the next few days, his thoughts oscillated between anticipation and dread. He thought frequently of Molly's words. Transformation wasn't merely an abstract concept, but an embodiment of courage in the face of old patterns. Yet questions loomed over him. What if his past choices resurfaced as accusations? Navigating those turbulent waters would require more than a new perspective. It demanded a confrontation with his own ghosts. As he awaited responses, Jonathan immersed himself in preparation, seeking insights into failure and conflict resolution, noting strategies used by leaders he admired. He devoured articles on emotional intelligence, wanting to hone skills that had long been neglected. In those moments of study, the seed of understanding began to germinate within him. He realized the triumphs of others often stemmed from their willingness to embrace discomfort, shedding layers to connect with their essence. The night before the meeting, Jonathan's sleep eluded him. The whispers in his head amplified, questioning his worth, reminding him of past missteps. He rose from bed, the chill of uncertainty clinging to him. Casting a glance toward the bathroom mirror, he explored the keen lines of worry on his face. The very face that had once grinned amidst boardroom battles. Too focused on winning, rather than genuinely connecting. "Who do you really want to be?" he asked his reflection, voice steady, yet low. The question hung in the air, swirling with doubt, but fueled by the potential for growth. The reflection stared back, imploring him to commit to the resolution. He pulled out his notebook and began crafting a new list. Traits he aspired to embody: empathy, honesty, leadership that inspired rather than intimidated. As he wrote, small realizations washed over him. He possessed hidden strengths he wasn't even aware of. An ability to listen, to resonate with others' experiences. Maybe that was the very essence he had glossed over in his relentless climb. His phone buzzed with a new notification, drawing him from his musings. An email from one of his former colleagues. Curiosity danced with trepidation as he opened it. The words leaped at him, a mix of skepticism coupled with a hint of interest. "I have questions," it concluded, a fragile string of possibility suspended in a sea of uncertainty. Closing the laptop, Jonathan's heart raced as a blend of fear and excitement collided. This was the first crack, an opening that could lead to deeper connections or further disillusionment. They won't go easy on me, the voice echoed, yet a counterthought emerged, stronger. But what if I am ready? The morning light spilled through the window, illuminating a path forward, albeit faint and uncertain. Tomorrow held the meeting, an occasion set for revelations, personal tests, and a convergence of histories that would forever alter his trajectory. As he tucked the notebook away, a final revelation gripped him. Change begins with understanding where you've been. Armed with that knowledge, Jonathan steeled himself for the challenge ahead. What would he reveal tomorrow? And even more daunting, what would they see in him once the masks dropped? With those questions simmering in his mind, he prepared to embrace the unknown, teetering on the edge of something transformative yet unpredictable. The once dreaded meeting promised to be more than a confrontation. It stood as a gateway to deeper understandings and potential realignments. Would he emerge the architect of his destiny, or would old chains bind him to the past? The morning arrived cloaked in a mist of trepidation, and Jonathan could feel the weight of his intentions pressing heavily on his chest. Every ounce of preparation felt suspended in time. He wanted to be resolute, to step into the day shielded by the understanding he had cultivated, yet self-doubt nipped at his heels. As he stood at the threshold of change, he couldn't shake the sensation of walking a tightrope. One misstep could plunge him back into the darkness. He dressed mindfully, opting for a shirt that whispered of professionalism, yet also signaled openness. It was a careful balance he sought to strike. Serious, yet approachable. Jonathan glanced at his reflection once more, this time seeking strength within the vulnerability. Today is the day, he reminded himself, a raw determination softening the edges of anxiety. Arriving at the conference room, Jonathan was greeted by familiar faces, each one a reminder of the past he had both wanted to escape and longed to reconnect with. He could see it now. The competitive drives that had once fueled their interactions had dulled, replaced by an air of unpredictability. How had he not recognized their shared humanity before? As he took his seat, he noticed his hands trembling slightly, a visceral tell of his nervous energy. The roundtable discussion began. Voices volleyed with both enthusiasm and skepticism, but Jonathan found himself muted amidst the expressions, digging deep to find the thread of courage he had unearthed in his solitude. Each question, a potential scorn, each opinion, a chance for rejection. It would take precision and authenticity to navigate this storm. When his turn came, Jonathan grasped it with trembling fingers. He opened his mouth, words tumbling out in a rush. I'd like us to rethink how we interact and compete. What if vulnerability was our strength rather than our weakness? Silence descended upon the group, thick and suffocating. It felt as though the room held its breath, waiting for someone to break the tension. Then, surprisingly, Ivan, a former rival, leaned forward. You're suggesting we trust each other? After all that's happened? The skepticism was palpable, yet within it lay a flicker of curiosity. Precisely, Jonathan replied, heart pounding in his chest. Our histories, while fraught, don't have to dictate our future. Our experiences might unite us if we choose to embrace them. Murmurs rippled across the table, and Jonathan seized the moment. He shared his own failures, experiences that had haunted his career, framing them not as signs of weakness, but as testimonials to resilience. He could feel the weight of judgment lessening. Perhaps it was in showing his scars that they could all find common ground. As the discussion unfolded, Jonathan began to see his colleagues in a new light. There were cracks in the armor of their bravado, too. Laughter broke out unexpectedly as Melissa recounted a disastrous pitch that had left her mortified. Others followed suit. A chain of confessions eased old grievances. Each admission was an invitation, and with each one, Jonathan's confidence burgeoned. They were not merely opponents. They were fractured comrades navigating similar shadowy seas. Then the room shifted again. Carla, who had always kept her distance, raised a brow contemplatively. But what if, despite our past failures, we find no path forward? What if we've been too damaged? Her question cut deep. Jonathan felt it resonate in the pit of his stomach. If he had to confront his own doubts, he could not shy away from others' fears. Maybe the point isn't finding a perfect path, he suggested, voice steady despite the quaking of his heart. Maybe it's understanding that those of us who dare to share our vulnerabilities can create new pathways together. The air thickened with contemplation. He could see their faces shifting, appraising the potential for transformation. Jonathan clenched and unclenched his fists beneath the table, a trickle of dread slithering down his spine. What if this wasn't enough? Just then, his phone buzzed in his pocket. Another email from a long-revered mentor was waiting. The sudden intrusion pulled him back to the present. It felt like a surge of validation amidst the uncertainty. Everything he had fought for, all the new insights and risks taken, were now tied to a recollection of his past mentor's words of wisdom. As the session drew to a close, the circle pulsed with renewed energy. Jonathan had unearthed a sense of possibility, yet the fear lingered. The path ahead remained fraught with challenges and opposition. It wasn't merely a singular revelation he sought. It would require consistent dialogue, relentless effort, and a willingness to embrace change day by day. But just as Jonathan felt a flicker of hope break through, an unexpected voice echoed through him, a reminder of the stakes involved. I can still fail, he thought, shivering against the brisk reality. Something had shifted, and as he made his way out of the conference room, Jonathan wasn't even sure what awaited him next. Would this new openness withstand the scrutiny? Would trust be built on the fragile foundation he had just begun to lay? All he knew was that he stood at a precipice, and the ground was beginning to tremble beneath him. Tomorrow would come with new tests, and he would have to confront a haunting amalgamation of expectations and self-discovery. How far could his attempt to inspire genuine connection travel before barriers came crashing down again? Each step he took would count towards either liberation or reassessment. Jonathan stepped out of the conference room, his heart still thrumming from the unexpected exchange. Colors were brighter in the hallway, but that vibrancy felt almost mocking against the tightness in his chest. He needed some air. The weight of the day hadn't lifted yet. As he moved outside, he found a secluded spot beneath a gnarled oak tree, its branches reaching out like comforting arms. The rustle of leaves felt alive, a sharp contrast to the stifling atmosphere of the meeting. Jonathan leaned against the rough bark, allowing the coolness to seep into him, mixing with the panic bubbling just below his surface. Was that enough? He whispered to himself, overwhelmed by doubt. Everything had felt so promising in the moment. Yet now his thoughts reverted back to familiar patterns. What if he had overstepped? What if their acceptance was merely a facade, a polite response to an uncomfortable situation? There was safety in his old ways, competitiveness, sarcasm, avoidance. And yet, here he stood, craving something deeper. He fished his phone from his pocket and stared at the email notification. The subject line, "Reflect on Authenticity," sent a jolt of dread through him. The mentor behind that email had challenged Jonathan often, wielding harsh truths that made him squirm. What if the content echoed his internal chaos? Taking a deep breath, Jonathan dared to open it. His mentor's words were terse yet pointed. Jonathan, true leadership begins when you embrace vulnerability. Don't shy away. The journey will be arduous, but authenticity breeds loyalty. He felt a rush of determination mixed with indignation. Did they really expect him to lean into vulnerability when all he had built was based on a different model? This internal dialogue was exhausting. Why was he fighting so hard against what he'd just begun to establish with his colleagues? Perhaps the pain of vulnerability was worth risking, more empowering than the walls he had erected. With resolve, he typed a quick response. Thank you for the reminder. I will approach my journey differently. As he hit send, he felt a flicker of relief. Perhaps confronting the discomfort wasn't the true fear. Rather, The possibility of connection and genuine camaraderie was just as terrifying. The moment felt pivotal, yet his mind was already racing toward what lay ahead. By the time he returned to his desk, an email notification buzzed again. From Carla. Jonathan, your words tonight were unexpected. If you genuinely believe in a shift in dynamics, I'd like to take you up on that. Meet me tomorrow morning for coffee? His stomach did a mild somersault. This invitation from Carla, someone he had perceived as a corporate fortress, felt like a gateway into unexplored territory. Would this small meeting lead him further along his path of openness? The stakes were high. She was no longer an antagonist, but an ally in a battle for transformation. Emotional risks were on the horizon, but with possibility came fear. What if Carla's coffee request meant exposing him to unexamined conflict? What if she dismissed his attempts to connect? Jonathan sensed that this could either solidify a collaborative bond or expose further fractures in what he had begun to piece together. As he prepared to leave the office, he caught sight of Ivan drifting outside. The vivid memories of their past tensions rushed back, each confrontation now shadowed with the potential for reconciliation. Jonathan wrestled with the idea of approaching him. Could he bridge this gap further? Would Ivan be willing to engage honestly, expanding their fleeting conversation from earlier? His pulse quickened, losing himself in the options now laid before him. Each decision felt more pressing than the last. Which door would he choose, and how would he handle the consequences? Tomorrow would not simply bring a coffee meeting. It could redefine everything he had known about connection, trust, and vulnerability. But then again, it might all come crashing down. Catching his breath one last time, Jonathan set off, propelled forward by the raw mix of hope and anxiety before him. The day would prove pivotal, not just a testing ground, but a defining moment on this trembling tightrope of his new reality. What awaited him in those coffee shop conversations? Would he be capable of sustaining the vulnerability once more? And what would be revealed by engaging deeper with Ivan? As Jonathan stepped into the fading light, the world around him sharpened, beckoning him toward the dawn of something altogether different. Tomorrow, the real journey would begin. As the sun poured into the diner, illuminating the familiar, comfortingly worn booths and clattering of plates, Jonathan Reynolds entered with a heart grounded in determination. This was not just another meeting. It was a culmination of his growth, a testament to the transformative journey he had undertaken since he first stepped back into this beloved eatery. A journey that challenged long-held beliefs, bridged past animosities, and awakened a yearning for authenticity. Just yesterday, the invitation from Carla had thrust him into a whirlwind of expectations and possibilities. Today, he felt the gathering energies of interconnected dreams and potential reparations. His past as a businessman had often felt like a fortress, impenetrable yet isolating. Today, he sought fortification and vulnerability, an elusive strength that could forge an unbreakable bond with those previously perceived as rivals. "Morning, Jonathan." Molly greeted him with her usual optimism, pouring coffee into his cup with an invigorating smile. It felt different this time, lighter. "You ready for the big day?" "More than ready," he replied, an undeniable confidence radiating from him. This was the moment where ambition met authenticity. As he sipped the coffee, Jonathan recalled the countless days spent obsessing over profits, completely detached from the essence of genuine corporate culture. Now, his focus was dialed into rekindling relationships, re-establishing credibility, and above all, cultivating community trust. The anxious energy of the previous weeks had ground to a clarity, a robust decision to embrace collective fortitude. Every ounce of self-doubt transformed into a driving force, reinforcing his commitment to unlocking a culture of collaboration rather than competition. As the clock ticked closer to his meeting with Carla, Jonathan prepared mentally, the words of his mentor echoing in his mind. True leadership begins when you embrace vulnerability. He took a deep breath, fortifying himself against the remnants of past apprehensions. With each pulse of conviction, he recognized that this chapter wasn't merely about saving a diner or even reclaiming a lost part of his identity. It was about proving that true success can be measured beyond balances and margins. He wanted to highlight the importance of emotional investment, the currency of respect, trust, and community. The moment arrived. Seated across from Carla in the diner's corner table, Jonathan was struck by the realization that this would not merely be a discussion. This was a vital step toward redefining his narrative. As he looked into her eyes, he saw an unexpected flicker of shared vulnerability. "I appreciate you meeting with me," he began, steady but earnest. "I want to foster a culture that breeds collaboration, and I believe this diner embodies that spirit. It's more than just a business. It's a cornerstone of our community." Their conversation flowed, a tangible shift evident in the air. Carla shared her own struggles, her voice wavering not from hesitation, but from authenticity, a characteristic Jonathan had grown to value deeply. He began to relate to her experiences of feeling isolated at the top, where the pressures of ambition overshadowed the fundamental joys of camaraderie. With each exchange, perspectives softened. Jonathan opened up about the internal struggles he faced, connecting his newfound understanding of vulnerability with their shared journey. This was not the cutthroat individualism he had once thrived in. This was the promise of transformation. Days turned into weeks, and as the ongoing fundraiser unfolded, Jonathan found himself at the helm of a movement that pulled not only funds, but faith back into the community. Together with Carla, Molly, and the local businesses, they weaved a narrative that transcended mere financial backing. It became a tapestry of human resilience, collective achievement, and shared history. Surrounded by faces, once distant but now allies, Jonathan delivered a speech that encapsulated the essence of their efforts, bouncing between hopeful laughter and the occasional tear. The diner was more than just a place. It had become a symbol of perseverance and human connection. He spoke of embracing mistakes as lessons, of learning from fear rather than avoiding it. Success, he concluded, his voice filled with robust conviction, isn't just about securing a financial gain. It's about fostering authentic relationships and being brave enough to reach out, to connect, and even to fail. Only then can we thrive as a community. The responses were electric. Applause erupted, not just for the achievements they celebrated, but for the relatability and courage Jonathan had showcased throughout this journey. Here was a man who had transformed from a self-directed millionaire into a community leader, embracing vulnerability as his greatest ally. The applause was affirming, as was the acceptance he felt from those who had once been skeptics. Jonathan's heart soared. He stood not only as a billionaire in the tech world, but as a figure who rekindled the belief in values beyond financial wealth. He had transformed both personally and professionally, moving from the brink of isolation towards a solid community where connection reigned supreme. In that final moment, the line between his past and present blurred into an enriching future, a future built on solid foundations of trust, empathy, and authenticity. Everyone in the diner smiled, echoes of laughter resonating through the air as the line between past and future dissolved into connections and possibilities. Jonathan had achieved something profound. He became not just a part of space, but the steward of its spirit. It was more than just another day in the diner. It was a moment of deep transformation, encapsulated by newfound growth and unwavering resolution. Now is the time for you to join this journey. Subscribe immediately to the channel, so you won't miss the next exclusive emotional stories that will inspire and empower you. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and make sure more people can experience these life-changing narratives. Comment down below with your reactions and theories about Jonathan's incredible transformation. Let us create a community of story lovers. And you must share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion and witness the magic of personal growth. You need to be part of this journey. Don't wait even one more second to show your support.